The human delegation stood to attention during their swearing-in ceremony, as all around us the revelry reached a fever pitch. This had been a long road, a long time coming, but a seat that was better deserved than any other in the history of the Confederacy. Humanity was finishing its oath of allegiance, and the Rathani ambassador seemed especially eager to send in his trade fleets. However, I had an agenda. With this declaration, I hereby announce the Terran Federation is now formally a member of the Galactic Confederacy. The Chamberlain yelled to a round of applause. I took my chance and pressed a button. The hovering platform on which my delegation was sitting detached from the wall and moved to a position near the humans. My fellow ambassadors scowled at me. As I did this, the chair recognizes the Asarani delegation. Do you bring any objections to the proceedings? Chamberlain asked with a raised brow. Well, yes, but no. Not really no. I am not here to provide any objections to the Terran's addition to the Confederacy. I do, however, have a few questions. Regarding Council Ruling Number 883, the non-strategic disclosure agreement, in so that humanity is in flagrant violation of it, in multiple cases. I have that documentation here, I said as I patted a folder nearby. Oh? If you do not object to the addition, then I have no issues. But you do realize that the disclosure agreement does not include strategic or infrastructure critical assets, correct? You have to provide us with something substantive. Chamberlain replied, Oh, I do. It's all right here. If the Council allows, I would like to call attention to humanity's so-called dark sites and how they are in violation of Council rulings. All of these planets are under a permanent military quarantine. Order. All of them represent a significant risk to human space. To such an extent, they appear to be under a permanent security detail. Would the Federation care to explain? I asked. The humans all looked at me, then looked down at the floor, rubbed the back of their necks with a deep, nervous breath, and all said, Yeah, nah. Never seen them do that before, one delegate idly commented. We are waiting for an explanation, I said. I was feeling shamelessly smug. Yeah, those are quarantine zones. Don't go there. Just don't. The female human, named Amari, said, We are going to need more information than that. The Chamberlain asked. Okay, we will be happy to tell you what is going on. On the explicit condition you obey the quarantine, those sectors have issues. Please don't go there. Fred, the human ambassador, replied, still doing that thing where they rub the back of their necks. Let's start with Dark Site, number Alpha 2, as it states here in the files, the planet Rakandos 3. There is not much information on this planet except its class, a forest world, and a simple note that reads, Do not enter the Feywoods, I said. The entire delegation suddenly had the expression of, Wait, what? As I read that out loud. Just promise. Promise. You will just not try to do anything, and we will explain. The female replied, Okay, fine then, I promise. I won't do anything about it, I said, still in full smug. Okay, fine. Rakandos 3 is a forested planet. The local wildlife are a little bit aggressive, Fred said, still nervously doing that thing with the hand on the neck. Define aggressive, Chamberlain commanded. We have reports of military personnel being kidnapped into the darkness after hearing strange noises, stripped of flesh and muscle, then resurrected as walking skeletons. So, yeah, Fred said with a frown. We all skipped a short amount of brain function with that. Wait, say that again? The humans all just shook their heads and nervously moved about. Think we should? Just this once? Amari nervously asked. Oh, come on, we let his shit get out, the casualties will be enormous. Daredevils and mercs abound, but I don't want their deaths on my conscience, Fred replied with a scowl. They're gonna do it one way or another eventually. It isn't your fault most of the population has more bravery than sense, the last human delegate Angus said, shaking his head. Fine. Christ. Seriously, why? Fred shook his head and stood to attention. Fine, but I want it on record. You have been warned. Stay Away, that is an order. Fred yelled, his voice echoing through the building. Chamberlain was taken aback a bit and his ears drooped. Noted. Please proceed. Our sector of the galaxy had a little issue with a precursor race that once lived there. They liked to dabble in certain things. And these dark sites are basically the remains of these dabblings. In the case of Rakandos 3, well, Fred said. Fred pressed a few buttons on his personal wearable device and a file was sent through. The delegation. The video played for the council, at volume, and showed body cam footage of a group of soldiers from some unknown agency being picked off one by invisible entities. One video captured a soldier straying too close to a dark patch in the tree line. The video slowing frame by frame to display the soldier being grabbed by a set of bony-looking tree bark-like hands, then disappearing into the darkness, followed by screaming and a hail of gunfire. The next video showed a different military force of unknown origin, engaging what looked to be the freshly flayed skeletal remains of human soldiers. Various expletives were thrown about as they exchanged gunfire with the strange army of skeletal, blood-soaked remains. The skeletons were defeated, but one could clearly see the uniforms, though tattered were the same ones worn by the soldiers in the previous clip. So yeah, do not enter the Fey Wood, for they shall strip thine flesh and deny you thy rest, so yeah. It's a supernatural entity we still don't quite understand at the moment. We lost 3 MTF teams trying to understand. For the moment, we're just holding the place down until we can figure out what's going on, Fred said as he stopped the recording. The smugness I felt immediately left me and was replaced with a sense of horrified dread. Precursors did that? I yelped. Well, yeah. The precursor civilization that populated our neck of the woods were, how can I put this delicately, inhumanely evil, psychotically deranged sociopaths, Fred said. I suddenly no longer feel the need to pursue this line of questioning any further, I said as I nervously shook my head. We'll get over it. You started it, we'll finish it, Fred said with a sly grin as he started another recording. Say hello to entity designation Dark Viper on the planet Reginald 2. Yet more body cam footage, mixed with security camera footage, started as we were shown a conflict with some kind of reality-breaking entity. Soldiers of clearly Terran faction engaging against what appeared to be humanoid figures in human uniforms of unknown make, but hollowed out, showing a clear sign these were nothing more than an unknown, unseen force, controlling what was essentially empty military gear. A camera panned up to show various multi-thousand-ton boulders, rocks, vehicles, and other strange items, including a battleship, casually floating around in the air above them as the battle continued. The video continued, showing a full-scale, modern armed conflict with these living uniforms and ordinary human soldiers, though the humans were making decisive strikes considering how fragile their opponents seemed to be. Dark Viper is a super or paranatural entity of unknown origin, presumed to be a psionic entity in control of the planet that takes control of uniforms, military hardware, and wages war on local occupants. All civilians have long been evacuated, and the planet is now in a state of constant war as Entity Alpha, callsign Dark Viper, repeatedly resurrects several months after being killed by MTF response teams. The entity is extremely hostile and has, the capacity to involuntarily warp the fabric of reality around its being, and effectively becomes a threat to any craft within the planet's radius, as it has the tendency to yeet building-sized rocks at passing starships. Do not approach, Fred said, again, unable to wipe the smug grin off his own face. Before the delegation could respond, yet another video started. This one only 30 seconds long. This one a short video, once again, body cam footage of a human soldier being grabbed by some strangely shaped, grotesque, fleshy beast monster the size of a house, then having his entire epidermal layer ripped off him before his top half is eaten by the beast. The freshly torn-off flesh is discarded, then the camera, presumably from a dead soldier, captures the sight of the skin itself starting to move about, as it appears to have been possessed by some other unnatural entity. The freshly removed skin crawls towards a nearby structure and attaches itself to the building. Then a montage begins where the progress of the house becoming living flesh plays out. Entity call sign Flesh Beast is a hostile paranatural biohazard that exists on the planet Achios 4. Do not approach, it wants to steal your skin, Fred said. By this point, the entire council was shocked, flabbergasted, terrified, horrified. Whatever descriptive adjective you could use to describe terror, we were it. Faces were frozen in an expression of abject horror. Fur stood on end. Some delegates were hiding under their chairs. Please stop, I meekly asked. Nope, your dumb ass bro it up. Here, have one more, Fred yelled as he started yet another recording. This one was from multiple perspectives, including a news camera crew during a mass civilian evacuation. Soldiers were barely holding their ground as a massive horde of humans with missing arms, legs, pieces of torso and parts of body, missing, covered in blood or blown away, shambled towards them. The image changed to a soldier screaming in terror as he pulls the pin on a grenade. The camera clearly shows this shambling horde tearing him apart and chewing on him as he goes down, only for his screaming to stop when the grenade went off. The camera changes again to find a group of soldiers holding off a swarm of these creatures called zombies while trying desperately to protect a civilian convoy. It got worse as we saw the sight of some oddly shaped fleshy monstrosity leap towards a soldier, grab him, then repeatedly slam his face into the ground. The monstrosity is then blown to pieces by a cannon shell. The noise causes a huge howl, to be heard in the background, followed by a swarm of these zombies. Entity from planet New Havana is a highly infectious viral strain that causes brain hemorrhaging, turning its victims into the living dead whose only purpose is to feed or spread the infection. Larger strains are caused by genetic mutation that turns its victims into horrible tank-throwing monstrosities. This is what we call a zombie outbreak. The entities infected appear to operate on a pseudo-hive mind, making avoiding or controlling them incredibly difficult, Fred said. Okay, enough. We get it. Please, for the love of God, stop, I yelled out, unable to take any more. So yeah, now that that's out of the way, please follow instructions. Do not enter. At least until we figure out how to make it go away, Fred said, still very smug. What do you mean, stay away? The Empire has armies 20 times your size. We can— Shut! We appreciate your offer, but this is our burden to bear, thank you. Besides, thanks to this nonsense, it might be over sooner than expected, Fred said with a shrug. What do you mean? Why did that sound so ominous? I asked. Well, some of us are idiots. We don't see this as a danger, we see it as a challenge. Your request here basically exposed all this to the general public. Daredevils, mercenaries, freaks, anarchists, etc. You've basically just opened the floodgates to people who don't abide by the law to basically walk straight into the gates of hell with a raised middle finger, Angus replied with a smug grin. Is there any precursor tech you can perhaps reverse engineer to fix this insanity? One delegate asked. Oh, hell no. If you picked up a thing that did that, would you want to see how it worked? I wouldn't. We came across most precursor tech and we thought, oh, hell nah. And all the tech we find from our estranged predecessors has been quarantined for later study. We aren't going to do jack with that shit until we know we can beat it first. Just in case. You know how it is. So, yeah, Ariana replied in turn. So basically what we're saying is, don't worry about it. The entire delegation gasped. The human said the words. The 4 fateful words that terrified every non-human to the core. When a human says, don't worry about it, that's when you know something is seriously wrong. The 4 fateful words in that specific sequence sent half the delegations into full panic, most of them, including myself choosing to run or find somewhere to hide. The humans scratched their heads in bewilderment at the sight. What did I do? Fred asked. I don't know. Want to get lunch? Ariana replied with a shrug. Curry. I want curry, Angus replied. You always want curry, Angus. We're getting a burger, Fred said. Curry burger.
Why are you humans so nonchalant about the ungodly entities tearing you apart? I yelled from behind my shelter. Because we've been through worse. We got this. It'll just take time, don't worry about it, Fred said as the delegation went off.
To a casual lunch. Enjoy next story. London, July 14th, 1917. General Nelchet had never faced this staggering quantity of paperwork in his entire life. His aide, Captain Barling, was scrambling desperately to try to sign and sort the ever-increasing pile of folders, files, and documents. The door opened, both men groaning as Captain Balcatter walked into the room, an angry scowl on his face as he plopped yet another pile of paperwork on the floor. "God, I can't do this anymore!" Nelchet yelled out in anguish. "I know, sir. Soldier on. We can't stop now. We honestly can't afford to," Barling said meekly from behind his mountain of papers. "It's the most ridiculous thing I've ever seen since—" Someone pointed at something and said, "That's bloody ridiculous," Balcatter said with an annoyed tone. "Oh, hello, Balcatter. How many more pallets of documents have we left?" Nelchet said. 41 pallets, including some gifts from the Garanians, the Remori, the Achardi, and a few, let's call them ritual sacrifices from the Wahandai. I pointed them all towards the canteen instead of the gas chamber. They weren't expecting it. Balcatter replied in annoyance. "How did we come to this?" Nelchet yelled out. "I mean, look at this. 27 notices of unconditional surrender, 37 notices of conditional surrender, 41 requests to become vassals, and even this—" "What's this one, Balcatter?" "It's a breeding request form, sir," he replied. "Indeed it is. This is absurd. I can't deal with this," Nelchet said. "Unfortunately, sir, it is our duty to sort through this stuff. Sort the unofficial stuff from the official stuff. Parliament is in a full closed panic session at the moment," Captain Barling said as he finished one pile of papers. "What are the Americans up to?" "And the Russians?" Nelchet asked. "Well, near as I can tell, the Americans are taking full advantage of the situation and are changing their mascots. It's gone from eagles to a barnyard open house over there. They've already sent up a dozen more ambassadors in the time it's taken for this nonsense to start. As for the Russians, well, they're being Russian. Revolution is in full swing, and everyone who can speak to the aliens is being shot, so not much going there," Balcatter said. "So basically the same as usual." "Well, at least that's helpful," Nelchet said. 2 more. Men walked in, depositing yet more paperwork in the room. "Daldrich, George, how goes the sorting?" Balcatter said. "Going pretty well, sir. Got off the division trying to sort through it all," Daldrich's hefty Cockney accent said as he hefted some papers into a corner. "My God, this is exciting," George said as he proudly puffed out his chest. "What's exciting about it exactly, George?" "Is it the concept that we as a species barely had the ability to manage our own nations, and suddenly we have an entire galaxy to care for? Or is it the mountain of paperwork we have to do instead of fighting a war? Speaking of, weren't we supposed to be doing that? Last I recall, Field Marshal Gauge was still trying to move his drinks cabinet 6 inches closer to Berlin," Balcatter replied with annoyance. "Well, that's the excitement, sir. The war's been called off," George said. "Seriously?" Balcatter asked with a raised brow. "Oh, indubitably, Balcatter. Soon as we got first contact, the entire front line was effectively abandoned on all sides. Everybody just gave up and went home to hear what the aliens wanted to say." Barling replied as he handed some papers to Nelchet. "God. Well, at least that's over. Doubt we'll start that shit again. So now what? Should I grab a spade and start filling in the trench line again?" Balcatter asked. "We can let the engineering corps return. No man's land to yes man's land, I suppose. We can sort that out when this mess is fixed," Nelchet said, gesturing to his paperwork. "Permission to speak, sir?" Daldrich said. "Granted private with all due sense of dread," Balcatter said. "So, I was thinking right? A month ago there wasn't aliens everywhere, right? And now we does have aliens everywhere, right? And we was fighting, right? And now we isn't fighting, right? So, what I want to know is, how did we get from one case of affairs to the other case of affairs?" Daldrich said. Everyone just stared at him for a minute. "Do you mean, how did this all start?" Balcatter asked. Daldrich stared blankly for a moment, smiled, and said, "Yeah. Well, Daldrich, it happened because we live in a galaxy made of people that have a genetically crippling case of ovinophobia," Balcatter replied. "Ovinophobia. Sir? Sounds like someone scared of ovals. Who would be scared of ovals? Now, cubes, That I can understand, George replied in earnest. Well, yes, I do say that cubes are rather terrifying, but ovals seems a bit Frenchy to me, Nelchet replied. No, that's ovino-phobia, sir. It means one is scared of anything of the genus Ovis, Barling said. Genus Ovis sounds pretty scary, doesn't it? George replied. Sheep, you idiots, sheep! The aliens are scared of sheep, Balcatter said with an angry tone. Balcatter leaned against a tower of paperwork near the wall. The aliens are scared of sheep? Of all things, sheep? Nelchet asked. Near as I can tell, in the far-flung history of the ancient galactic races, there lived a species called the Harvaris, Balcatter said. Ooh, a story. I love these, George said, and he and Daldrich settled into a spot to listen. Balcatter took a deep, frustrated breath and began again. According to the information we have been able to get from our new vassal states deep in the ancient history of the galaxy, there lived a great scourge known as the Harvaris, a herbivorous race of creatures that dealt upon the galaxy great misery in the form of slavery, torture, military conquest, and blah, blah, blah. These creatures were apparently so adept at combat and military warfare, and so very good at the whole subjugation thing, they controlled a full quarter of the galaxy, much like the British Empire as of now. So they're like the Space British? Only worse? Daldrich said. I guess you can say that, but we aren't quite as brutal. Sure, we shot people and nicked their countries, but at least we did it with dignity. Anyway, eventually some of the galaxy's less proficient denizens got really annoyed with the constant attacks and formed a coalition in order to deal with them. It took them 1,000 years of traumatizing war to finally force the Harvaris into extinction and release the galaxy from their influence. Only it didn't work, Balcatter said. What do you mean didn't work, Balcatter? They won, didn't they? Nelchet said. Well, sort of. They got rid of the problem, but not the phantom they left behind. See, over 1,000 years of war, 1,000 years of military recruitment, 1,000 years of propaganda, and 1,000 years of trauma from invasions. It left a mark of the race's existence on their very soul. Like that boil on Daldrich's right cheek. That won't ever go away no matter how much soap you use, Balcatter said. That relates to our present mountain of paperwork, how? Nelchet asked. Simple. They had done themselves into this hatred of these enemies so deeply that it became a factor in the entire galaxy's collective genetic spectrum. In short, everyone got scared shitless into permanently hating sheep, Balcatter replied. Well, that seems silly. What happened then? Barling asked. Well, sir, the rumor goes that a Varkarian scouting party was attempting to put in an infiltration team to do the usual things aliens apparently do. Unfortunately for them, they landed in Wales. Odd place to choose to perform any kind of infiltration mission, if you ask me. But that's where they were. Their first port of call was a sheep farm. They apparently panicked at the sight, retreated, and alerted the rest of the galaxy of some kind of threat. Balcatter replied. Are you telling me what I think you are telling me? Barling asked as he peered from behind his wall of papers. Well, let's see then. This scouting party went back to the galaxy and told everyone that their ancient enemy had returned and several invasion fleets were sent to Earth. Only they didn't find their ancient enemy. They found a facsimile of their ancient enemy that humanity had apparently domesticated, to the point of using them as both a food and clothing source. The shock and ridiculousness of the situation broke their brains, Balcatter said. Broke they brains out, sir? Daldrich asked, clearly still confused. Well, the ovinophobia they developed as a result made them so completely scared shitless, they went in a near catatonic state when encountering a sheep of any kind. In short, the entire galaxy has a nearly lethal fear of anything mutton or wool. And the sight of US having no fear at all when near sheep freaked them out even more. It's like us with big spiders or elephants with mice. That's how terrified they are, Balcatter said. So let me get this straight, sir. Ancient aliens had killer sheep, and they hated those killer sheep so much that now when they even see something that resembles sheep, they get terrified to the point of silliness? George asked. Yes. Precisely, George. Well done. You got one right for once. In essence, we, humanity, the silly bastards who were throwing 50,000 men into a meat grinder every week, have basically passed with flying. Colors. A contest of strength and bravery that we weren't even aware existed. And because we not only passed it, by being near sheep without dropping dead, and more importantly, in their eyes at least, domesticating them and turning them into pets, clothing, and food. Because we passed, we are now considered the most powerful force in the galaxy, purely because of the fact we aren't scared shitless at the mention of the word mutton, Balcatter said. So that is why, Balcatter, the last 3 weeks of work has been nothing but sorting surrender notices? Nelchet asked with a crooked brow. Yes, sir. It is. The first contact with the aliens was an interesting circumstance, apparently. Barling replied. It was? Tell, Nelchet said. Well, intelligence says the aliens attempted to place infiltration, machines called drones, in a barnyard, and got the absolute piss scared out of them by a sheep that had wandered into the barn. The local farmer, a Welshman, came in and brought the sheep away. The aliens went into a full-on panic, and the farmer, at least in their eyes, saved them from the sheep. As far as I remember, the farmer then fed the aliens, unknowingly apparently, mutton-based shepherd's pie. This traumatized the aliens as they were essentially eating the remnants of their ancient enemy. Panic ensued, and the aliens demanded their own surrender, Barling replied as he shoveled another stack of paperwork onto his desk. That's what pisses me off about this whole thing the most, sir, Balcatter said. Oh? It isn't the fact that the war is suddenly and inexplicably over. It isn't that we suddenly became the controlling empire in a galaxy-wide state when we barely have the resources to manage our own world. It isn't the sudden burden of responsibility we are about to undertake, and it isn't the sudden, inexplicable change of global body politic that is about to happen. No, there's one part about this whole situation that pisses me off more than anything, Balcatter said with a sigh. What would that be, sir? Deldrich asked. It's the fact we now have to, whether we like it or not, we now have to actually acknowledge the Welsh. Balcatter replied with an angry growl. All the men thought about it for a second, sighed, and said, Bugger. Thanks for diving into this story with me. Don't miss out on the next one. Hit that subscribe button, give this video a big thumbs up, and drop a comment below with your thoughts. I'd love to hear what you think. The girl stood in front of the dwarven smith, casually flirting her long, thin, furry tail around. She was flanked by 3 other girls. He wasn't too sure about what was going on or why it was going on, but he knew this cat girl was trouble. He had known she was since she reached adulthood. Her friends, an elf, a human, and a wolf girl, had always offered him some kind of twist or bargain, or a secret flirt for some cheap service. He always rejected it, of course. He was a dwarf of honor, after all. Hello there, Genasi. Here to get. Me in trouble with my wife again for some cheap nails, He said with a raised brow. She blushed, shrank a bit, and cleared her throat nervously. No. I found something and I need you to tell me what it is, Mr. Varric, she said with a blush as her tail nervously wrapped itself around her waist. She handed him a bundle of cloth, clearly quite a hefty one, judging by how she held it. Oh? What's up with this, then? What's so important about it that you wrap it in? A cloth and bring it to a blacksmith of all people? He asked, taking the object. I found it lodged in a dead smog dragon's spine, she said with little care. Her statement could be heard across the market, forcing the bustling place to suddenly come to a dead stop. You did what? He yelled at her. Please, Genasi, don't tell me you went dragon hunting. He dropped the object and grabbed her. As much as this young lady annoyed him, he wouldn't dare let her get into any danger. She hastily placated him and shook her head. No, I didn't. I was hunting for rabbits in the Red Forest this morning. I found a dragon dead. On the ground. I never fought anything, I swear. A crowd was starting to gather, and she reached into her backpack and pulled out proof. The dinner plate-sized scale of a smog dragon. A shining iridescent scale of gleaming silver and black, shining with the sun and sharp as a blade carefully wrapped up in a mithril cloth. Genasi's friends gasped and stood shocked at the sight of it. The market went into a vicious uproar at the sight of a fresh dragon scale, and dozens of people swarmed the smith's shop to take a closer look. The town guard responded quickly, preventing a riotous uproar, and settled everyone back to their business while Genasi returned the dragon scale to its protective sleeve. All right then, How'd you get this? Varric asked as he put the bundle of cloth on his work desk. Like I said, found it in a dead dragon. I already told the city guard about it. They already seized the corpse. I was allowed to keep a scale. I did, however, pull this thing out of its spine before they took it. Nobody I know knows more about metal than you, so... Here it is, Genasi replied. All right then. Let's see, Varric said and unwrapped the cloth. Inside was an odd lump of twisted metal, an object that was cylindrical in shape, one end twisted, and warped from a truly vicious impact, and the other end flat, covered in blood and soot. Huh. Okay then. Varric took the thing and cleaned it in a bucket of water, then took a look at it with a selection of magnifying glasses. So, any thoughts? Genasi asked after a few minutes. Covered in dragon blood, splinters of thick mithril strong bone stuck inside grooves and shards. This definitely killed a dragon, or at the very least, hit a piece of dragon bone. Definitely. Some kind of projectile, but nothing I've ever seen. Whoever made this has a very strange ideal of metallurgy, Varric said as he looked at the odd thing. Care to elaborate? Genasi asked. Think of this thing to be just like an arrowhead without the shaft or fletch, but it's the most complicated arrowhead I have ever seen. A solid shell of hardened iron surrounding a solid rod core of steel. Judging by how the shape of it warped, it's likely how it was designed. The soft edge of the iron shattered and fragmented like glass and squashed itself in, forcing the rod in the center to receive all of its energy. That is amazing. Varric mused over the object. Is that good or bad? Serenia, the elven girl asked. To be honest, it's both amazing and terrifying. To make a thing like this is quite the feat. To get it working to the point it kills a dragon, more so. But to make it fly enough it looks like this when it hits? That's terrifying. No enchantments, no runes, just solid block of metal with a bit of engineering. This wasn't made by my people or the mountain elves either. Something entirely different made this thing. I'd love to try to remake this, Varric said with a strange grin. Okay. So now what? Genasi asked. I have no idea. I'd love to meet the person who made this. It's ingenious. I have no idea how they would go about using it, though. It takes a stupid amount of force to warp metal of this grade so badly. I hope whoever built it only uses it for killing corrupted dragons, though. I shudder to think of what a thing like this would do to a man or mer, Varric said. Okay. Well, the city guard should be done by now. I guess I can go there and try to investigate now. Might find more of them, Genasi said with a smile. Well, it's a paltry sum, but here's 20 coppers for you. No sense in letting good metal go to waste, Varric said. He handed her 20 coppers for the object and began to heat up his smeltery. Now you lot go. I have work to do. The four girls reveled at the sight of 20 copper coins, despite the 30 weight gold dragon scale they had with them, and excitedly charged away towards the Adventurers Guild. The guild was chuffed to say the least on the acquisition of a smog dragon scale, and the girls left it there so its exact value and application could be tested properly. With a finder's fee of 5 gold coins, the four hastily hurried to the site of the dragon's corpse in hopes they might scavenge some more. Alas, the city guard had long since picked the site clean, leaving nothing but an enormous gray bloodstain on the ground. Genasi could clearly make out the outline of where the dragon came through the trees. It was hit low and hit hard, leaving a hole in the tree canopy before smashing into the forest floor. The girls all gathered around the bloodstain and Amari. The wolf girl was the only one excited to see the stain on the ground, as she gleefully gathered up the residue from the dragon's blood everywhere she could. Serenia and Marie, the human bard, scouted around the area to see if anything could be found. Just as the party was clearing things up, Serenia's ears perked up. Thunder, she said, looking around. What? Genasi asked as she sifted through some grass. Thunder. I just heard it coming from the southwest, Serenia replied. I don't hear anything, Amari replied, angling her ears to meet the noise. It went away. There it is, Serenia said. Amari's ears perked up and followed the sound as well. Oh, I heard that one, Strange. Mima didn't call for any storms for weeks. Not a cloud anywhere. A wizard practicing magic somewhere, maybe? But alas, friends, no. The wizards and mages of yon fair kingdom hath been sent to yon harrowing place this tide. Magic, 'tis short in supply, Marie said, showing her unique upbringing. Do you think we should take a look and find out? Serenia asked. Well, I don't know. Maybe we should cause... What if that... Another blast of distant thunder. Is that what killed the dragon? Maybe we should scout it at least and tell the guard. All for scouting? Genasi asked. Aye. The other three replied. With that, the four ladies trudged through the Emberwood forest. Eventually, however, the thunderous roar ceased, and the only thing they could use to guide them was a general direction. Eventually, however, they left the forest clear on the other side and stopped dead in their tracks. The feeling of curiosity gave way to sheer terrified horror as the result of a battle of biblical proportions lay before them. The ground they walked on saturated in blood. Nobbins, trolls, even a few gargoyles lay dead on the ground in the aftermath of a massive battle. Not so much a battle as a massacre of excessive proportions. After vomiting profusely, the girls' curiosity took them over and they started investigating what atrocity happened. Poor Genasi saw the upper torso of a troll, appearing as if a fireball tore it clean away and cast it aside. A group of Nobbins lay dead, riddled with small holes, some of which seemed powerful enough to tear off arms and legs. It was as if a storm of invisible glass arrows hit them like a storm and shredded them to pieces. Another troll, a very large one, had its head completely vanished, pieces of its bone and skull lodged into nearby trees. A gargoyle, one of the most dangerous beasts in the land, had been torn clean through, a giant hole right through the torso, and another gargoyle had both of its legs vanished from it. But one particular corpse, the simple body of a Nobbin, stood out from the rest. It lay on its belly, a mangled mess of flesh and bone that looked like it had been squashed by a giant. Pipe. Hark! This one be the most strange. I dare say a giant smacked this one with a large tree, Marie said as she investigated the body. The other girls carefully trudged through the blood and gore over to Marie, and likewise looked at the body. A huge, strange gash, similar to that of a giant snake with a very thin, heavy body, had been left on the earth. This poor Nobbin had been squashed by it. Hark! There be two of these tracks. Is this perchance a new foul denizen of the deep? Marie said as she pointed to the other track, parallel to the one that squished the Nobbin. I sure hope not, Amari said. She yelped, a quick woofy yelp that meant she saw something shiny. She charged at it, and when she crested the hilltop nearby, she squealed, What in the hell? What are all these? The other girls charged after her and saw the hilltop was covered in strange brass objects, strangely shaped empty cylinders, some large, most small, with an odd cylindrical shape that tapered off to a point. Amari had to cover her nose, not used to the strange burnt smell of the objects, but the two large tracks, like giant snakes, had carved a clearly visible path through the forest. Something big happened here. Ugh, I don't like this. What kind of monster spits? Brass cylinders, and slaughters 5 trolls, 60 Nobbins, and 3 gargoyles? We need to tell, Genasi said. I very much agree, dear sister. Mayhaps they can better deal with this fell beast. Hark. What be that noise? It approacheth, Amari yelled. Hide, Genasi said, and the 4 hastily hid in the trees. The 4 were taken aback, Genasi almost being crushed as a strange metal machine with round wheels, an unpowered wagon or magical enchantment of some kind charged over the hill, barely missing taking off her head. The monster machine roared and landed with a heavy thud in the grassy knoll, its wheels carving a path, splattering the blood and mud-soaked grass in all directions. The 4 terrified girls cowered behind a few trees as the machine roared angrily. Deploying some kind of large mechanical arm with a heavy claw, it painstakingly collected whatever intact bodies it could find, loaded them into the flatbed in the back, then quick as it came, charged back up the hill and vanished into the brush. The 4 stood dumbfounded, awed, terrified, just staring at the trail of devastation it left. So, Genasi said. We're not going to inform the guard, right? She asked. Her three friends said, Nope. We're all going to go after that thing like we have something to prove, and this will all end in a crazy adventure that will almost get us killed like 100 times, aren't we? Genasi said again. Yup, they all replied. Gods above, not again. Genasi said in frustration as her arm was grabbed and dragged along with them. The machine was long gone. Despite its heavy metal, it was shockingly fast and had vanished through the destroyed forestry with speed never seen. The girls simply followed the obvious trail of debris, blood, and its strange wheel tracks. Eventually, the base of the Cragmire Mountain presented itself, only for the tracks to start deftly climbing up a road that had been carved into the mountain. The girls approached and continued following the tracks, with Amari commenting on how it was only a few days old, judging by the raw sand and lack of protective coating on it. They followed the road for a mile, the freshly carved edifice snaking up the mountain's southern peak, before coming across a small clearing between two cliff sides, wide enough for traffic, but also wide enough for youngling red dragons to snake through during their migrations. Serenia was the first to notice the distinct four-fingered claw marks in the rocks. Hold it! This is red dragon territory. It's a migration point, Serenia yelled as they approached. We've come this far. Let's just see what's on the other side, then run like hell once we know. Come on! It's just over that crest, Amari commanded and headed towards the gap in the rock face. They moved up and entered the clearing. Their jaws dropped, shock and awe overcoming them as they surveyed the center of the valley. The mountain was a long, dead volcano, with 5 peaks loosely shaped like a pentagram, with a huge crater in the center of it all. Inside this crater sat a huge complex with high walls made of strange woven metal and heavy set stone. The infamous red dragons flew in many directions, perching themselves atop strange metal and wood bars mounted in the cliff sides, or casually wandering about inside of large, perfectly carved holes dug into the mountainside. Nestled inside the large complex at the center were 2 buildings, strange structures in their own right. One was built like an ancient cathedral, small but intricately made with careful attention to detail. The other was just a massive box, with a large sloped roof, multiple chimneys and exhausts atop the roof, with a massive door on one side. The floors of this complex were a mixture of common sand or the strange rock that had been used to pave the floor. Parked with care, on these paved sections were some strange metal contraptions, including the very one they chased here, its cargo bed now empty of corpses. The girls stood dumbstruck as the large square building's doors loudly and slowly opened, to reveal another huge machine similar to the one they chased. This one's cargo bed, however, loaded to the brim, with filled versions of those strange brass objects they found. Suddenly a roar was heard from their right as another odd vehicle came barreling up the road into the hill. The girls screamed as the thing charged at them, barely stopping inches from their faces. They stared at the odd thing as strange humming. Noise, like the loud, repetitive beating of a dragon's wings, emanated from the front of its odd, rectangular face. A thing opened up to its left, a door, followed by 2 heavy boots hitting the ground, and a human, covered in heavy scarlet red leather cloaks, gilded with gold trim, walked towards them. He looked at them and went to the back, where the girls noticed the machine had passengers, 6 red dragon younglings riding in the back, looking all too smug for some reason. So this world has elves and cat girls? The man asked his passengers. That and more. One of the dragons said. At what point were you going to tell me this? The man asked again. This was funnier. All of the 6 dragons said at once, followed by them chuckling at the man's expense. Great. My clients are frat boys, the man said, shaking his head in frustration as the passengers laughed at him. The man approached and looked carefully at the group of confused, terrified women. An elf, a lupine, a necopara, and some chick, dressed like it's the 17th century for some reason, he said, looking at them. I wouldn't exactly call that dressed, to be honest. One of the dragons yelled over the chuckling, Oh, there's the migraine. Yep, there it is. Migraine's hit. That's nice. Ooh, God, I don't get paid enough for this, he said again as he laid his head against the metal machine. You weren't getting paid at all, one of the dragons commented. That's my damn point, you schmuck, The man yelled back in frustration to a chorus of laughter from his passengers. The man shrugged his shoulders and with a frustrated sigh held out his hand in greeting to the group. Hi, Hawaii. Name's Caliban. Just call me Cal. I own the place, apparently. The four stood there, once again their jaws opened in shock as they gingerly reached out to greet him. More than 200 upvotes and this becomes a series. If T ends up being just a one-shot, I'll forget it exists and move on. Just a quick reminder before we get started, only 4% of my viewers have subscribed to the channel so far. If you enjoy the content, I'd really appreciate it if you could take a moment to hit that subscribe button and support the channel. Thank you so much.